Good morning, everyone. It is a beautiful day. I am in Chatham today, and I will be taking you for a different kind of wandering and adventure. It's just past 8 o'clock in the morning, and I will be going on a boat trip. I can see that there's already a queue of people, so they will be my fellow passengers, and that's the boat that's gonna take us on a journey to Southend-on-Sea, which is in Essex. We are now in Kent. This is the River Medway, absolutely beautiful, and we will be going up on it, meeting the River Thames and then the North Sea as we arrive into Southend-on-Sea. We will be on water for about 2.5 hours, ashore for about 5.5, and then back. So I can't wait. I love using alternate transport modes when possible. It doesn't happen often. Hello swans, two beautiful swans are just coming from under the pier. Oh, by the way, this pier is called the Sun Pier, and yeah, can't wait. I've never done a trip like this within the UK, so it's very exciting. Now let me show you the other side of the pier. Well, as you can hear, there's gonna be a few screaming children and assorted people on board, so it's highly likely that I won't be able to narrate a lot, and also I have no idea how loud is it gonna be because of the engine and all that, so I suspect I might have to put music on, but I hope you will enjoy the views. I'm gonna try and show you some interesting bits as we go past. For example, we will pass a castle. If we are going in that direction. I'm just thinking, well, yeah, I think we should be going in that direction. Anyway, no more mumbling. Let's enjoy the trip. And before we depart, I just wanted to quickly show you the boat. The one looks good. Looks fairly old, but obviously it's in good working condition. So yay, we shall start boarding in a couple of minutes, so I better go and join the queue. Okay, tickets scanned, and let's go board the boat. I'm a little bit excited, maybe a little bit more. One of the inside bits. There's a bar there, restaurant area there, but obviously I want to go up and stay outside as much as possible. Let me zoom in because I want to show you something. Can you see that? In front there is Rochester Cathedral, and behind it Rochester Castle.
Can you see that? Yeah.
Absolutely cool. And then you have all the building works. River Medway is very wide and very meandering and absolutely beautiful.
On board this Jetstream Tours vessel cruiser for your journey out to Southend. Just before we depart the pier, we do have to provide everyone with a very quick safety announcement to let you know that the vessel you're in is licensed and capable of carrying up to 250 passengers. We carry enough life-saving equipment for that number, which comes in the form of life jackets, life rafts and life belts. Remain calm and follow strict instructions given to you by your captain today. And assisting me with the vessel, we have Sean and Chris. Life rafts are located on the front, and in the event of an emergency, they game off the game.
And here we go.
We do downstairs have a bar selling a variety of refreshments, from teas, coffees to alcoholic beverages. So if anyone fancies a drink, just head on downstairs. We have got light airs, lovely clear blue skies. It's going to take us approximately 2 and a bit hours to get to Southend. We do have a little stop in at a pier on the Isle of Sheppey, where we'll be picking up a few more people before making that last minute voyage across to Southend. Okay, so sit back, relax, enjoy your crossing. We'll be along the way pointing out a few places of interest to try and save your journey from being a complete magical mystery tour. So we're setting off now downriver, passing by, or leaving behind us Chatham. On our right-hand side, whilst we have this lovely little pub here, the Command House. It was here where a storekeeper used to live, right on the entrance of a wharf known as Gun Wharf. So it was obviously where the Royal Navy kept a lot of our artillery. And it was his duty to look after the wharf and make sure no nefarious characters got into it. So his family used to live in the Command House. Today it's a lovely little pub set back from the water's edge. Nice little bit of food in there. Every Thursday night, quiz night. Not bad at all. So on our right hand side we have Gun Wharf now, and you can see with the Medway Council offices. Yeah, Chris. We can see that actually all the windows are all closed up. Whilst it might be a Sunday, in fact Medway Council have effectively abandoned this building because of the issues with RAC. But what's more interesting is the fact that underneath this building was actually the original site of what would have been the initial dockyards, established here in 1547 by Queen Elizabeth I. Ships would have been under construction or awaiting repairs, pushed up on the mudbanks here. We probably could have walked right out into the centre of the river aboard the decks of ships if we wanted to. But in 1588 that fleet was put to its greatest test, setting sail from Chatham to be deployed against the Spanish Armada. But as the Navy grew, more and more pressure was placed upon those dockyards to keep ships at sea. It resulted in the swift mechanisation of many of the yard's time-consuming processes, such as the sawing of timber and the manufacturing of paint and rope. Many famous ships have been put to sea from here, including HMS Victory, Admiral Lord Nelson's ship. But here to our right, these lovely Edwardian-looking buildings, the brick face of the sail lofts and the ropery. These buildings are 220 metres long, and it was here where the rope was manufactured for all of our sailing ships. It was the buildings themselves that actually set the standard length for a coil of rope. Now if you go anywhere in the world and ask for a coil of rope, you will get 220 metres. So that was the longest bit of rope that they could actually wind here at the dockyard. Now some of those manufacturing processes you can actually go and still see today. Chatham Dockyard, although it has been closed down from the Royal Navy in 1985, it's now open as a museum. And while some of those working practices still take place today, you can actually go inside here and see how the traditional method of making rope is carried out. Many famous films have been made here at the dockyard, including James Bond, Les Miserables, and also Sherlock Holmes, to Downton Abbey and Call the Midwife. big budget TV dramas. Since its closure, we've been opening up the various dry docks to members of the public, allowing them to go in and see some of the old warships that we've got on display. On our right-hand side now, you'll see 3 black cassoon gates, each sporting the name of the warship that rests behind in a dry dock. The first is HMS Cavalier, a destroyer of the Royal Navy, built in Cowes on the Isle of Wight in 1944. She saw active service up until 1977, when she was decommissioned here at Chatham and then converted into a museum ship. She's toured several ports, including Brighton, Southampton and Tyneside, before settling here in the same dry dock where HMS Victory was built. We've also got here a submarine, HMS Ocelot, or S-17. The last submarine built for the Royal Navy here at the dockyard. She served Britain until 1991, when she was eventually decommissioned and brought back here the year after. And finally, HMS Gannet, a sloop built for the Royal Navy, not here at the dockyard, but rather on the mouth of the River Medway, down at Sheerness. Now, a sloop has only one head sail. If it had 2 or more, the term cutter is then used. Although a composite ship, she's actually the same method of construction as that T-clipper, the Cutty Sark. Built very similar times, she was built as an anti-slavery patrol vessel in the Mediterranean. In 1901, she was saved from the breakers and converted into a sail training ship. Eventually, she was hulked, where she spent a lot of her time in Southampton water, some of it actually up in London. Returned back here to the dockyard and has now been restored to her former glory. Now, some of the other dry docks today are barely noticeable, with many of the old dry docks now covered over, filled in, and we've been converted into stores. It's here to our right in these sheds where the RNLI have entrusted a selection of their old rescue craft to a museum. But the last dry dock still has dry dock gates, and it's in here where we still have work being carried out on various craft. Tugs, barges, houseboats all go in there to have their annual paint ups. Great to see that it's still being used for what it was originally intended for. Now, as we continue downriver, some of the old dry docks now, again, they're almost barely noticeable, whilst we have the old barge dock here to our right. A little bit further down, again, more dry docks exist, but these have now all been filled in. In the 1850s, we started to expand our Royal Navy. The dry docks here needed to be, we needed more dry docks and more places to store our Navy ships. Here to our right was originally a large marsh. You used to have a great view across those marshes all the way down towards Sheerness. But then, with the increasing size of the Royal Navy, we started to dig out this marsh to create 3 new basins. Basin number 1 today is Chatham Maritime Marina. Although it's been demilitarised and returned to civilian use, today we've got here in some of the old machinery houses, workshops, Chatham Dockside. There's a big shopping centre and an Odeon cinema. Basin number 2 is where we have Chatham Water Sports Centre today, and you can go paddleboarding, learn to sail. It's great for the kids because it's all closed-in dock system. But basin number 3 is still today the commercial docks for the time being. Inside basin number 1, where Chatham Marina is, coming off from it we have 5 dry docks, arms that stretch out from the basin. And where you can see these 3 tall green flats to our right, these flats are built on the piers that run out between those dry docks. Because they come off of an impounded basin, meaning the water level doesn't change, once ships were placed in those dry docks and the cassoon gates lowered in, those dry docks needed to be pumped clear of water. We're coming up now to a fantastic looking building, red and white brick. and this was where we stored the pumps to pump the dry docks empty. Pump house number 5. Today it's the Copper Rivet Distillery. It's here where we manufacture gin, whiskey and vodka. I can't think of a more fitting use for this lovely little building here. Coming up on our left hand side now, we have Upnor Castle, a tranquil castle guarding the river, constructed in 1599. It was armed with 18 guns. There was also a chain that was strung across the river here that could be brought taut in times of war to prevent ships, enemy ships, making their way up towards our dockyards. That attack came in 1667. When a fleet of Dutch ships mounted an attack on Britain. They first captured and bombarded the town of Sheerness, and then over 3 tides made their way up the river, burning and sinking ships along the way. They stole one of them, the Royal Charles. It was taken back to Holland, where she sat in the shipyards over there, too big and cumbersome to keep getting out of the shallow waters of Holland, and so she ended up being scrapped. But they did keep the stern section of the ship, and if you head on to the Rijksmuseum, you'll find that as a plaque on the wall in the museum, held there as a trophy to that monumentous defeat over the British. It was probably the worst defeat in British military history, and whilst we do not really teach the Medway raid, as it's so called, to our kids in the schools, it's not in the national curriculum. Over in Holland it is. They call it the Tocht naar Chatham, which loosely translates as the journey to Chatham. But like I said, we call it the Medway raid. Like we teach the Battle of Trafalgar, and Admiral Lord Nelson, he's our sort of historic hero, if you will. The Dutch, they champion Admiral Michiel de Ruyter. Now that epic battle was recorded by Samuel Pepys. He wrote in his diaries about what was going on. He said, I do not see that Upnor Castle hath received any hurt by them, though they played long against it, and they themselves shot till they had hardly a gun left upon the carriages. So badly provided they were, so lack of munitions was Upnor's failing. Now, whilst Upnor continues all the way down this left-hand shore, we're reminded that it's still home to the some of the Royal Engineers, and that sometimes they're underway with their boats here, playing around, building bridges, towing stuff, just causing a general nuisance, really. But here on our left, an old tug depot, run by GPS Marine. And originally, this jetty that come out from our left has a narrow gauge railway onto it. That railway run back through the sidings, up through the gap in the hills, where you'd be taken up towards Chatham. It was here where many of the servicemen used to live, being transported down to the river by that narrow gauge railway, and then crossed via a small ferry to get to the dockyard. Now, whilst this barracks is closed now, being returned to civilian housing once more. Today the River Medway is really home to a lot of budding sailors, inspired by the rich tradition of fishing, trading, or even pirates. Yes, the infamous Chatham pirate, Sir Francis Drake, lived nearby. He grew up in a small village just outside of the Medway towns called Upchurch. His father was the pastor of the church there, and he was press-ganged into the Royal Navy at a young age. Probably learnt to sail on these waters before becoming the master of his very own ship, the Golden Hind. Queen Elizabeth I's very own privateer. tugboat run its way up to back up to Chatham. It's actually one of the old naval tugs, a girl class. She's a vessel now called Christine, having kept her name from the Royal Navy. And it was these tugs that used to assist ships, our Navy ships, in and out throughout the 50s and 60s. The dockyard. Lovely little vessel, this one. Been kept very nicely by our owners. And it's now based at Chatham, just above Southend here. Currently doing various work up and down the river, towing barges and moving stuff around. Also goes coastal as well, that one. Also to our left-hand side, now this stretch of river, notice that it doesn't have any sea defences or river wall, not like it does on the right-hand side. There's actually a hill, but it's also an area of a special scientific interest, and a triple SI as they call it. It was this area that has all been protected under Natural England because of the fact that it has been undisturbed for all those years. It was probably the same view that you would have received coming back in from sea with those sailing ships, making your way back up to Chatham. It's probably the same view that Sir Francis Drake received as well. Now the River Medway is teeming with wildlife. We have over 150 different species of fish living within it, ranging from cod, bass, flounder, dab, Dover sole, smoothhound, skate. It does give a rich picking for a number of marine mammals, including seals and porpoises. And particularly on such a calm morning, the chances are we might see a little seal swimming around in the river, a little head bobbing around. Perhaps
that would be very cool.
A grey seal or a harbour seal. More likely to be a harbour seal up this neck of the woods. The grey seal, because they're much larger, they would tend to be out fishing the deeper waters, more closer to the estuary. But
I can see jellyfish.
Porpoises are a type of dolphin.
I don't know if I can show you, but
what you might see is just basically
the water's murky, but I can definitely see them.
The surface of the water.
Oh. Anyway, let's go back to the beautiful view.
And then they'll head on back down.
Sorry about the crazy filming. I also need to pay attention that I'm not going to drop my phone into the river.
In 2018, as we were heading on down river here, we did encounter once during a fish and chip cruise a large pod of dolphins, about 30, 40 of them, all come charging up river. The river was boiling. It's an absolutely fantastic sight to see. But that was some time ago. They are out here though, but generally they pod together and they're much further out into the estuary. If they do come up here, they're normally chasing a school of bass and hopefully feed them. They went straight in, straight back out again. Great to see. We've had various whales in the river as well, but generally if whales come up here, they are lost. They will be generally trying to find food, but the River Medway doesn't really have the sort of food that a whale would eat. Plankton or krill, lots of shrimp, yes, granted that, but just not the quantities that they need. Let's quickly go over to our left-hand side, and you'll see hidden amongst the trees a red brick wall. Now this is all that's left now of Cookham Fort, built shortly after the Dutch raid as a response to try and protect the dockyards and try and shore it up a bit more. But most of it has now succumbed to the power of the river. Also to our left, we have the Who Marina, where we can see a number of houseboats and barges, all stacked up on the shoreline. Now it's a great way that gives some vessels a second lease of life, but some of these barges were probably the old 19th century barges that traded up towards London Bridge. There's old passenger boats over there, tugs and lightships. What's probably more interesting is the fact that this marina was built on the site of an old cement works. The River Medway is renowned for its brick making and cement factories. Further up river, up towards Finsbury, we had a number of brick fields. It was here where the yellow Kent stock brick would have been manufactured, and then that would have been, most of these bricks would have been loaded into Thames barges, sailed around to London, where they would have been sent up there to build some of our Victorian buildings up in West London. The yellow Kent stock brick was good against the polluted environment of Victorian London. But here in the Medway, we also made Portland cement. Taking the mud from the Medway, went into this factory, refined, and made the sort of very white cement that you would see between those red bricks. The mud that was quarried mainly came from the marshes just off the island, off of the cement factory, from roughly where this island is to our left-hand side. The navvies used to come out here, dig away at the mud, sending it ashore, and it was refined. Slowly but surely the marshes diminished. But it wasn't until the Royal Navy started to dig out the dockyards to our right that Who Island started to grow once more. Today it is mainly a naval dumping ground. Although the last bit of material went here in 1985 during the construction of the Canary Wharf Tower up in central London. It's a big nature reserve, great for birds, no natural. And like I say, it's not actually inhabited by humans. All abandoned today, like many of the islands around the River Medway. On our right-hand side, we have a steam paddle wheel tugboat. This is the John H. Amos, a steamboat that was built on the River Clyde, assisting vessels in and out of the docks up there, often the construction. But she was bought by the Medway Maritime Trust. She was brought down to the River Medway, renamed Hero, where she sat outside of the dockyard for many years with the hope that perhaps she might be lifted out of the water and placed on display. But actually the dockyard didn't really want it. So she ended up sinking several times on a small slipway. She was then lifted onto a barge in a hope that they might be able to secure funding to continue their restoration. And even the barge that it sits on is an old naval vessel, a vessel called the Portal Narvik that was used in D-Day. It was later used in the Bikini Atoll during the nuclear testing. Maybe one day we'll see a steam again, but I think we're all looking at it thinking that it might just be another waiting vessel for the scrapyard. Now here to our right, we're coming up to a number of cranes and barges, and whilst these cranes and barges sit on the entrance of Chatham docks, as we go by them, you'll notice the large lock gates behind. And it was here where various warships would have made their way in and out of the port of Chatham. They would have been heading on there. So we would have seen destroyers, frigates, Arctic exploration vessels. We've seen submarines, aircraft carriers, galleons. I mean, every vessel that you can think that used to be owned by the Royal Navy probably at one point went through the two large lock gates to our right. Today, Chatham Docks is, whilst the Royal Navy have gone out, they've now made it a commercial dock. In there we have the ArcelorMittal factory, which is basically importing steel. We've got timber going in there from Norway, and also they did have some scrap being exported there, but it's starting to be closed down quite quickly because all this area is all set for gentrification. A beige funnel sitting on top of an old paddle steamer. This is the Medway Queen, built in 1931 in Troon, Scotland. She was built for the River Thames to take passengers on their holidays between Rochester, Strood, Chatham, Southend, down the estuary, all the way up till 1962, when she was eventually sold off to become a nightclub on the River Medina. She fell into a bad way over there, eventually sinking several times, until she was rescued by the Medway Queen Preservation Society, brought back to the River Medway, where she sat for years on the dockyard's wall, sinking several times there too, and finally moved to Damhead Creek, where she was dismantled piece by piece and containerised. She was rebuilt in a dry dock in Bristol, in the Abels Yard, finally relaunched in 2015, where she was brought back here to the River Medway and placed on display. Now you might think, why go to so much effort for such a small, insignificant ship? But actually, her history is quite something. While she traded between Rochester and Strood and Southend, carrying passengers north-south, during the war in 1939, she became HMS Medway Queen, commandeered by the Ministry of Defence and turned into a minesweeper. She was out there protecting the estuary every evening, going backwards and forwards, searching for magnetic mines that had been dropped by the German Luftwaffe. When her time was coming up, she was called upon once again for Operation Dynamo, where she set sail from the River Medway and made her way over to Dunkirk, bringing over 7,000 of the waiting men back to Britain. So she's in preservation there at Gillingham now, having been completely rebuilt from keel to top. And whilst she's a great little boat to go on board and visit, you can have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee in there, she's open on most Saturdays. There is some speculation whether or not she will be placed back out into the estuary, paddling away, but yet we're still to see funding coming in for any boilers. But all the machinery is technically all still there, just the boilers are missing. So we're passing now by the Strand at Gillingham, and from here on down we start to see the river opening up into the mudflats and the channels, the backwaters. Great for havens for birds, particularly nesting birds for over the winter. As we get into September, we start to see a lot of the springtime birds starting to migrate south, and we get birds coming in from Scandinavia who are then migrating down to Britain for warmer climates from the Arctic. But here to our left-hand side, New Island, whilst it spans today over 180 acres, at the far end of the island we will see very shortly a granite-built fort. Now, of course, with Upner Castle now much further upriver than the dockyard itself, Cookwood Fort as well, the dockyard needed to be protected from the entrance much further downriver. And so in 1856 we started construction of several forts around the UK coastline. Whilst we were renewing the fleet and digging out the docks at the same time, we were receiving French prisoners of war. The French was also doing a similar thing. We were turning our backs on the days of sail and going over to steel-clad, steam-powered leviathans. Napoleon Bonaparte was rising to power once as well, and we started to think that we might see an invasion from France. So here on the end of Hoo Island, the Royal Navy constructed Hoo Fort, a circular fort. It had 3 levels. There were gun turrets around the central level, which sported 10 heavy guns, pointing out in a 365-degree fashion. Sporadic a little bit, and so please do use this opportunity to go and grab a cup of tea or a coffee at the bar. We're going to start pushing on now downriver, and as we pass by some of these islands, little bits of history pop up, and I'll let you know as we go by. And we should be into Queenborough in about 40 minutes or so. Like I say, we've got about another 30 people to collect before pushing on over towards Southend. So sit back, relax, enjoy the morning airs, and don't forget, if anyone does have any questions or queries, please don't hesitate to come and have a chat with me. More than happy to help. ahead of us. I didn't see it myself, but the skipper here did. So if you're looking out ahead towards the green buoy, there is some sort of movement in the water, so maybe level with the blue barge left. Your eyes peeled on that water surface. Pop his head up, all you see is a little black end, and we stare back at us, making sure that we're not in his way. He's not in our way. Come on, Sammy, where are you? Barely think it'll be level with the boat now on our left, somewhere. Is that him over there on the left? Right over on the shore. I can see something in the water over there. Maybe you can introduce it. It does look like a seal. Yeah, it is. Nice little seal over there. See a little grey head over towards the church spire to our left. A red buoy, little brown, black thing just sort of poking out the water. That's the head of a seal. Right,
It's way too far.
Pop down.
I can see its little head.
Drifting along.
I can't show it to you.
Nose in the air.
It's on the other
Not a care in the
side.
world.
Very, very far. This must be the sister fort of who? And I'm not sure what this one is called. I'm hoping he's gonna tell us.
As we come round the corner, we see Darnet Fort
There
on our
we
right
go.
hand side. Now this is the other
Darnet Fort.
fort, identical to who fort behind us. But this one's actually in the hands of a private owner. It's got something to do with Chisholm House carrying use.
And what are you?
Now here to our left hand side, we're coming up to an old jetty. This
Oopsie.
is Kingsnorth Jetty and was originally the site of an old power station, originally coal-fired. On the end of the jetty we still have 3 cranes. Now although these are now relics of the activity that used to take place here, we're reminded that that tall crane in the centre with the big clamshell bucket on the end of the wire, this was how the coal was unloaded from the ships, digging them out, sending them ashore on the conveyor belt. Towards the end of its life, they started to burn wood chip. 2 extra cranes were then added onto the jetty to basically suck out the wood chip from the ship's holds and again send it along the same conveyor belt into the power station. But the power station was then knocked down and about that's at the back. A smaller generating plant was then established. Today this is run by an energy plant.